Hello Foggies, and welcome to this week's episode of The Foggy Author. If we haven't met before, my name is Brett Jackson, and this is Hoggy, and together we write books through the haze of brain fog. My writing life, or as I like to call it, the Fog Log. In this week's My Writing Life, the last beta read is complete, and I'm now getting stuck into the last round of beta edits. I know this has taken a very long time, but I really want to thank you all for your patience and assure you that the next book won't take as long, because I've learned a lot about the editing process, and I realise I've been doing it all wrong. Instead of proofreading the manuscript first, then doing the developmental edits and line edits, etc., I'm actually meant to fix the plots, do the developmental edits, line edits, tweaking, and then do the proofreading, because that way I only need to do the proofreading once instead of the 4 times I've done it. This should cut down on the amount of time working on the edits, the amount of time you've had to wait, and also prevent me from getting really bored and fed up with the whole editing process in future. Short story, doing this the right way really helps. Thanks to the Next Draft podcast for all the amazing tips that helped me learn this. Albeit a little late, but better late than never. The most important lesson learned here is, when you learn about the craft of writing, read as many books as you can about writing, but also read books about the correct way to edit, create blurbs, make book covers and more. In other news, I recently found myself in Ireland as my wife and I celebrated our wedding anniversary. We had a jam-packed week visiting all sorts of attractions and even managed to fit in the Literary Museum. We saw the home of Bram Stoker, the guy who created Dracula, found out loads of cool stuff about Jonathan Swift, the Gulliver's Travels, Oscar Wilde, and much, much more. We even managed to fit in a trip to the Guinness factory, the zoo, took a trip to the coast, loads of museums, and so much. It was a great time. The weather wasn't that bad, considering the fact that we got absolutely drenched on the first day, and my first purchase in Ireland was a golf umbrella to keep us all dry, which surprisingly I was allowed to bring home on the plane, although they did test it for explosives. Lastly, in my fog log, my little friend Henry is with us again for a short stay. So we've been feeding him lots of treats and taking him out for walks. People always stop us and ask how old he is, and are really surprised when we tell them that he's nearly 10 years old. He then puts on the butter wouldn't melt look and the puppy eyes, and they fall for it every time, but we know the truth. He's a grumpy old man, and he'd rather be at home asleep or eating more food. Ask the Author. Ask the Author is going away for a bit. However, I'll still be answering your comments, questions, and giving shout-outs to you in the Fog Log section. So, keep those comments and questions coming in, and I'll get to them as soon as I can. In its place, I want to introduce a brand new segment to the newsletter, a game I've created that I like to call Fantasy or Sci-Fi. Each week I'll be throwing out 10 names of characters and asking you if those names are fantasy or sci-fi. This is just a bit of fun, so please don't search the web for the answers. You'll only spoil it for yourselves. Once you've worked out whether they're sci-fi or fantasy, please feel free to post your answers in the comments. And if you can't spell the names, don't worry, because half of them I can't spell either. Just write the number they're in, and I'll mark your score. All the answers will be revealed in the following newsletter. So for example, if I say 1 Darth Vader, you would type 1 Darth Vader Sci-Fi. If I then say 2 Kylo Ren and you don't know how to spell Kylo Ren, that's okay. Just type 2 Sci-Fi. And now let's start this week's fantasy or sci-fi? 1. Darth Vader, fantasy or sci-fi? 2. Kylo Ren, fantasy or sci-fi? 3. R2-D2, fantasy or sci-fi? Now, they're going to get a little bit harder. Elminster, fantasy or sci-fi? John Connor, fantasy or sci-fi? Ripley, fantasy or sci-fi? Illidian Stormrage, fantasy or sci-fi? Minsc, fantasy or sci-fi? Black Widow, fantasy or sci-fi? Aragorn, sci-fi or fantasy? Just kidding. Fantasy or sci-fi? As I mentioned earlier, pop the number and your answer in the comments. If you don't know the answer, just have a guess. I'll be revealing the answers next week. Good luck! Book of the Week. This week's Book of the Week is actually on a catch-up for the last couple of months. What on earth do I mean by that? As some of you may know, some of the book recommendations I post here are from a mailing list rotation which I'm on, from a Christian fantasy author friend of mine called Jennifer Burrows. She holds a list of authors who like to share each other's books once a month. Recently, I received an email from her asking if I was still partaking in the book recommendations, and I'm so pleased she emailed me this reminder. The plain and simple fact is that this Foggy Author had, until 28th of October, completely lost the links to the rota and all the author blurbs and more. So, unfortunately, no book recommendations have gone out. And now I have a bit of a backlog, which is good news for you, dear readers, because it means I have lots of great reading recommendations coming in the next couple of weeks from independent authors around the globe. So thanks to Jennifer Burrows for this reminder, and thanks to all the authors on the rota for being so patient. I've now popped into my emails and created bookmarks in my browser to all the relevant rota links to ensure this never happens again. Fingers crossed. So, today's book of the week is actually September's book of the month, and here it is. Introducing Lynnea Mileusnich, I hope I pronounced that correctly, and her book Heir of Promise, which is book 1 in the series Wings of a Hero. Heir of Promise is the first book of a middle grade Christian fantasy series about an unworthy wolf who's chosen to save all of wolfkind from their tyrannical king, and must discover the Great One along the way. The only wolf of his pack to be born with wings, Saka seeks to abandon his constant torment of a family. But when he kills his brother in a fit of rage and flees his family's vengeance, he learns that being on his own is far from the glorious life he envisioned. The rest of the world schemes not only to ruin his life, but to tear off every last piece of his sleek black fur, all except for one pink wolf who blossoms amidst adversity. Bella teaches Saka his wings are not just props on his back, but the call to a higher purpose. Alongside the resistance, he's thrust into war. If he can manage to defeat King Mofu, it might be the opportunity Saka needs to make up for his mistakes. Will Saka be able to make amends for killing his brother? Can he be the hero Bella says he is? With the entire continent looking to him, will the Great One come to his aid to unify the land, or will they crumble under Mofu's paw? As usual, the link to this book is in this video's description. Featured article. This week's article is all about advertising your books. As a part of the Guinness factory tour, we found out so much about their product. How to pour the perfect pint of Guinness. The fact that Guinness is not actually black and white. Spoiler, it's ruby red. But one of the most notable things was their advertising. Guinness has always had rather unique advertising, and that's because their ethos is simple. Their adverts must be as good as their product. You see, if you want people to read your books, you must be able to attract their attention, and this means you have to step up your game. I've learnt that instead of constantly posting endless drivel on social media, only to get millions of followers and no book sales, that it's actually better to create a quality advertisement that showcases your product and helps people to really discover what you're selling, what the audience is missing out on, and why they need to read your books. In the Netflix series House of Guinness, I noticed that the way that Guinness broke into the American market was for someone to smuggle bottles of their drink across the ocean and then meet up with like-minded people who are able to showcase the product. I'm not asking you to smuggle your books. However, if you're struggling to sell your books to family and friends, as most new authors do, then it's about time you started trying something different. Joining 12 different social media platforms and whacking out ads sounds like it might work, but it won't get your next book written. And you'll just spend more time falling down the rabbit hole of social media and inevitably ending up seeing yourself procrastinating most of the time, refreshing the pages of all the different platforms and trying to keep up with the latest trends whilst coming up with new ideas, etc., etc. For us foggy authors, this is never going to be sustainable. I know, because this happened to me. In the end, I shut down all my social media accounts over a year ago and opened a single YouTube account instead. This has taken away the rabbit hole of social media and has replaced it with a more productive, more focused way of building an audience, because I only have to focus on one advertising channel at once. But am I reaching more people? Probably not, but the quality of my work has increased, and that has made a vast difference to me, and it's starting to show. Recording a chapter of my book on a regular basis and releasing these newsletters is giving me a chance to introduce myself, my books, and start to create an audience, and that reminds me of the Irishman who went to America to sell Guinness. Advertising your books isn't just about showing people a cover and posting, "Buy my book or the bunny gets it." It's about the whole thing. It's about you as an author. It's about the journey you're on. It's about the fact that you are someone who is chasing a dream and achieving it. And then it's about your book cover. It's your story, content, and how you're writing more and more and intend to do so in the future. It's about the quality and readability of your books and stories. In short, the real story is about you and the imaginations you enthrall and how you can make a difference through your words on the page and the pictures they create in your readers' minds that leave them wanting more and more in the future. And that's all for this week. Please subscribe, and I shall see you again in the future.